We dropped our special report we've been working on. It's called Sanctuary, where we take you behind the scenes with ICE in one of the bluest states of America, a sanctuary state of Washington. Here's a clip for those of you that missed it.
Okay, so we're in the greater Seattle area today, and we're going to be going out with a joint HSI and DEA team.
It's the middle of the afternoon behind a grocery store in Burien, Washington, just south of Seattle. ICE and DEA agents have intel about a drug deal that's about to happen. Their main suspect is an illegal alien.
I'm thinking this is him, probably. Here, the surveillance team was on him and said that he was pulling into Fred Meyer, so looks like he's pulling up. Our team's now rolling in.
Scenes like this have played out all over Washington state with increased frequency since President Donald Trump was sworn in for a second term. Illegal aliens accused of child rape, drug trafficking, kidnapping, robbery, strangulation, domestic violence, pulled off the streets of Washington by federal immigration agents, proving even in a so-called sanctuary state, there is no sanctuary under President Trump for violent criminals who are in the U.S. illegally.
Getting this person out of the country where they can't do this anymore might be the most effective way of dealing with it.
Matthew Murphy is the acting special agent in charge for Homeland Security investigations in Seattle.
You know, I have a lot of friends and colleagues around the country that operate in different places where they're, you know, and it's very different, where they're fully integrated with state and local police to do these types of operations, and it definitely makes their job a bit easier. We're doing work that I think benefits the community. You know, I think hopefully most people are in favor of getting fentanyl and getting methamphetamine and arresting these types of targets. So, you know, I think hopefully the people will be relieved to see that we're arresting someone that's doing this kind of stuff in the community.
So check out our full special report, Sanctuary. It is up now across all of our platforms, even those platforms that are not subscription platforms. We dropped it last week. We've also released a bonus interview with Congressman Adam Smith, who was featured in the special report, but we released the full unedited interview with him where we go back and forth. He's a Democratic congressman who represents the suburbs east of Seattle. And I enjoyed the interview. That's why I wanted to release it in full. You know, clearly he and I disagree on a lot of stuff related to immigration, but I think to hear him acknowledge, like, yeah, of course the border situation is better under Trump. And to also talk about, with nuance, some of the aspects of sanctuary policies that are not working. I think it was good to hear a Democrat say that there are some things that should be no-brainers, like running deportation flights out of the King County Regional Airport when you've got like criminal rapists and murderers who are going to send back to their home countries. And he also said he's open to having conversations about one of the other key issues at the center of the sanctuary state debate, and that is this issue with ICE detainers. So there's a story relevant to, I think, our special report today that I want to talk about that puts this issue into even greater focus. I mean, anyone with common sense should understand how ridiculous it is for local jurisdictions not to honor an ICE detainer when you have a known criminal, sometimes convicted criminals, who ICE wants to get out of our country because they're not here legally. Like, why would everyone not be on board with that? So I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but a clip from our special report with Congressman Michael Baumgartner paints, and it makes a pretty good point about this issue, I think, of detainers and the state sanctuary laws not allowing local jails to honor ICE detainers. Here's a clip with the congressman.
We know right now there are hardened illegal immigrant gang members and fentanyl dealers inside of Washington state jails. And if the system were working properly, when ICE or the federal immigration authorities would issue a detainer saying, we know this bad guy is in your jail, please hold them so we can come and get them out of the country. What's going on is Nick Brown is saying to sheriffs like Dale Wagner in Adams County, you can't talk to the federal immigration officials. And so what that means, instead of being able to pick that guy up in jail and take care of him, that person is then released into the community. And so when ICE wants to go find him, they now have to get 8 or 10 guys in body armor and weapons drawn, and it's very dangerous for the law enforcement officers. It's dangerous for the community. It's dangerous for the individual, and it's not great for the immigrant community either, because it means when ICE comes through, more people are going to get swept up that are lower priorities.
And I think that's a really good point at the end that I don't hear enough Republicans making. If you want to appeal to the, oh, this is so sad, don't sweep people up or whatever it is, if you're saying, we're not going to detain this guy for you to come here, ICE, we're going to release him into the community, and then ICE has to send a bunch of agents out into the community, you don't think that they're going to arrest that person and they're going to have other violent criminal illegal aliens around them that are then be like, ICE, well, you're here too, come along. So that's something that progressives and Democrats should actually be on board with, is like, hey, this actually exposes, this puts ICE out into the communities that they might not otherwise be in. So yeah, let's hand over the rapist, the murderer, the drug trafficker, and the domestic abuser or whatever it is, and let's make sure ICE isn't out in the communities if we can all help it. So we ran this special report last week, and then as we were gone, this insane story pops up out of Washington state that epitomizes why these sanctuary policies have to be rolled back. Look, even if it's not all the way. And I get it that there's like this, oh, they're going to go and just stop brown looking people. Oh, they're going to stop people who look Mexican and they're going to say, show me your papers. None of us want that. None of us want a police force like that, to live in a police state like that. But there's a lot of gray area between that and helping the feds get murderers and rapists out of our communities. So this from the post-millennial. And let me say, you wouldn't even know about this if not for the post-millennial evil conservative media. Only ones will dive into stories like this. So the headline, ICE confirms suspects accused of kidnapping and torturing Seattle area woman are illegal immigrants with alleged ties to Tren de Aragua. This from Katie Davis Court, who did some great reporting on this. Kevin Daniel Sanabria Ojeda, 24 years old, and Alexander Moses Gutierrez, 25, both citizens of Venezuela, have been booked into the King County Jail on charges of robbery, kidnapping, and attempted murder. The defendants have been accused of kidnapping a woman who's 58 years old outside of her apartment complex in Burien on January 21st. The victim was allegedly robbed and tortured before being driven to a mountain pass 90 miles away, where she was shot and left for dead in the snow, according to charging documents. Miraculously, the victim survived. ICE spokesperson David Yost told the Post-Millennial in his statement on Thursday that the agency has lodged 2 immigration detainers with the King County Jail in Seattle. He said both suspects are citizens of Venezuela who have alleged ties to Tren de Aragua, the gang, violent street gang. So that happens, right? Anyone with a brain. Okay, they're accused of kidnapping, torturing, shooting and leaving for dead a 58-year-old woman. And now ICE has lodged these detainers against them, even though they know it's fruitless, right? Just to say, hey, if this guy makes bail, if for any reason these 2 guys are going to get released from the King County Jail, let us know. Because we don't want illegal aliens who can flee back to their home country so they can avoid prosecution to just be released out onto the streets. It is so stupid, the idea that we wouldn't assist the federal government with that, right? But of course, we're not going to, because the sanctuary policies are black and white. Ari Hoffman said King County won't honor ICE detainers for Tren de Aragua gang members that allegedly kidnapped, tortured, and left a Burien woman for dead because of state and county sanctuary laws. A King County spokesperson told him, under Washington state law and King County code, King County jails may not release a person to federal immigration authorities absent a criminal warrant issued by a federal U.S. district court judge or magistrate. How absolutely asinine is that? So, and at that point, who are you protecting? Who are you protecting besides the kidnappers, torturers, attempted murderers? Are you protecting the other citizens of King County who are now left at the mercy of these people who have no tie to the community? They're not here legally, so they can flee and go back to their home jurisdictions. And why wouldn't they? I would. If I was in another country and I did something horrific like that, which of course I never would, but then I make bail and I get out, you think I'm sticking around to face Lady Justice? Of course not. So you just let them out onto the streets. It's wild stuff. Right, left, and center, anyone with a head on their shoulders should understand that's ridiculous. So the sanctuary policies are bad enough. But why don't you think there's this overwhelming pushback over this, right? Why aren't people like in the streets over stuff like this? Why aren't people demanding that elected leaders in our state change such a clearly wrong-headed policy? It's the media's fault. because the media shields information like what the post-millennial put in there from the populace at large that isn't as informed as you are, that isn't as eager and interested in independent thought and looking and searching out other sources of information. The people who, put the same Democratic politicians back in office, and they might read their Sunday edition of the Seattle Times, and they might turn on the evening news for 5 minutes or watch the news in the morning for traffic and weather. They don't know this is happening to this extent. And it's the media's, more than the politicians. It's the media's fault, because the media is supposed to be the barrier. The media is supposed to be the accountability arm. And they're just not. Had you read the Seattle Times about the attack on this woman left for dead, you would have no idea, if that was your primary source of information, which it is for a lot of people in the Seattle area, you would have no idea that the suspects are in the country illegally, or that they have ties to a violent Venezuelan street gang. The headline from the Seattle Times: 3 men left Buryan woman for dead on side of I-90, prosecutors say. And this is a lengthy article from the Seattle Times. Not one mention that they're here illegally, which ICE offered up. They know. The Seattle Times knows. Not one mention the suspects are here illegally. Not one mention of the alleged tie to a violent street gang. Why on earth would you continue to go to the Seattle Times for information when they are intentionally keeping information from you? And to protect who? Who are they protecting? Not you. If they were doing their duty to protect the public, they would let you know, hey, here's what's going on. Here's how this impacts you. The sanctuary laws, they let people like this just go poof back out on the streets and try to disappear again. I blame the media way more than I blame politicians for this situation. If the media across the board were honest and transparent about what was going on, I don't believe we'd be a sanctuary state. Because even, I think, progressive Democrats would be demanding that law change, because it's just so wrongheaded. It's just so obviously asinine. And you get, there was this other example. I mean, the hits just keep coming, where if the general public knew about truly how sanctuary laws, they frame it as, we're not hindering, we're just not going to help. Oh, you can still do your federal immigration enforcement. We can't stop you from doing that. We're just not going to help. And they make it sound like it's so inconsequential. Like, well, we don't have enough agents to help or officers to help anyway, so we're just not helping. No, by not helping, you are hindering. By having sanctuary laws, you are making it more difficult to get these people off our streets and out of our country. Here's another example of this. ICE Seattle had put this out a few days ago. Rafael Garcia Lopez, 26, a citizen of Mexico, was arrested by ICE in Mount Vernon. He has previously been removed from the U.S. with criminal convictions in Skagit County for assault with sexual motivation, and rape of a child. Okay, so he'd already been in the U.S., had a conviction for child rape, was deported, and is back in Washington State where ICE picked him up. Katie Davis Court, great work again. She's been all over this immigration stuff. Highly recommend you go follow her and support her work at Katie Davis Court on X. She said this illegal immigrant was deported from the country in 2024 after spending time in jail for raping a child. The state of Washington issued Rafael Garcia Lopez a state driver's license after he illegally returned to the United States. So this guy rapes a child, an illegal here from Mexico, comes into our state, in our communities, and rapes a child. ICE manages to, even though nobody honors any sort of holds, he spends time in jail, ICE deports him from the country. He comes back illegally right away. And because of our sanctuary laws and the fact that our state databases and systems won't even let bureaucrats know whether someone is illegal, and because you don't have to prove citizenship to get a driver's license in the state of Washington, the child rapist who came back into our country just like that gets a driver's license. And he gets to drive and live and work amongst all of you like nothing ever happened. And thank God for the men and women of ICE who picked his ass back up and are sending him back to Mexico. In spite of sanctuary policies. In spite of sanctuary policies. Anyone who supports sanctuary policies supports that child rapist and supports his right to be here and to get a driver's license. Anyone who supports sanctuary policies supports helping to secure the release of those two individuals who took a woman from her home, beat her within an inch of her life, dropped her off at the pass, and shot her and left her for dead. Because you can't have it both ways. The way our sanctuary laws are currently structured protect those people. If you want to reevaluate and you want to be more nuanced and say, okay, here's where it crosses the line. We don't want the Seattle Police Department out there on traffic stops or State Patrol on traffic stops saying, oh, how brown is your skin? Oh, okay, can I see your papers to make sure you're an American? Nobody wants that. Nobody's going to do that. But if you feel like you need some sort of sanctuary policies to protect against that happening, by all means. This is not that. This is protecting child rapists, murderers, kidnappers, robbers, domestic abusers who have no right to be in this country in the first place, and removing them from this country and from this state is a public good. This is insane. And I don't know how many stories like this there have to be for us to wake up to this fact, but if the post-millennial, if us, if Katie Davis Court, if Ori Hoffman, if Jonathan Cho, evil conservative media, I'll have more on that on tomorrow's show. Well, pre-tease, long tease. If we're the only ones who are going to tell you about this, then nothing's going to change. Because as much as I hate the legacy media, and I think they're failing in their duties and intentionally keeping information from you, they collectively reach more households in this state than we do. And until they're willing to do their jobs and tell the truth, then nothing is going to change. And we're going to be stuck with these backward policies that are making our communities less safe.